So Grow a Garden recently had the fairy update, and when I signed on, my goal would be to accomplish as much as I could in the fairy update within a little over a day. Now, I would not be using any Roblox, so as I went throughout the day, I would constantly be signing on and off as much as I could, 10 minutes here and there, really trying to accomplish as much as I could within a little over a day. But even I was not expecting what happened over the course of the day playing the game. Because over the course of the video, insane things would happen. I would start with over 10 trillion shekels, I would lose it all, I would try to build it back up as much as possible, I would get completely new plants both from the seed shop and also the new enchanted seed packs. And speaking of the seed packs, one of my major goals of the video would be to get the Wisp Wing, which of course is the rarest plant from the seed pack with only a 0.5% chance of getting it. I would build up my garden, get new animals, and the animal I definitely wanted to get by the end of the video was a new cockatrice, because once again, it would be the rarest of all the pets you could get from the enchanted eggs with only a 1% chance. So I did wonder, okay, how quickly am I going to catch on with the fairy update? Now, it did feel like I got the hang of things fairly fast. Of course, the fairies were mutating my plants into glimmering ones, and I would have to constantly be collecting them and handing them into the fountain with the chance of getting new wishes. I would also be accumulating fairy points, which I would be trading in for upgrades, and my goal throughout the video would be to try to get as many of these fairy upgrades as possible. Now, as I said, I would start with a little over 10 trillion shekels and lose it all, so how exactly did I do that? Well, I would trade in all of my shekels to have my garden ascend, which of course reset them down all the way to 100 shekels, or basically nothing. I simply thought it would be interesting to reset my shekels. Now, something unfortunate was about to happen because I did that, but I'll talk about that in a moment. But yes, I would begin by trading in the glimmering mutations, racking up fairy points, which I would use to purchase my first upgrade, which would be to upgrade the glimmer multiplier. But finally, I would offer enough glimmering plants to make my first wish. Now, with the first wish, I would choose my first enchanted seed pack. And with the seed pack, I would get my first glowthorn. Now, over the course of this video, I would get so many seed packs, so I'm not going to talk about all of them that much, but I was definitely hoping to get some of the very rare ones. And as time went on, I also became more intentional with what glimmering plants I actually handed in when, because the fountain would give you certain plants that they wanted you to hand in so that you could get the wish. For example, to get the next wish, I saw they wanted a glimmering apple. So I quickly handed one in, got another wish, and with this wish I got an enchanted crate. Now I would need to wait a little bit to see what I would get, but I did have a little bit of an unlucky situation, which was the result of trading in all my shekels, because at this point I had around 12 million shekels. And the seed shop would be selling a plant I didn't have, which was a sugar apple seed, but it was for 25 million. And again, I tried to gather as much as I could, but I wouldn't be able to get what I needed to in time, so unfortunately, that one kind of hurts because I still don't have that particular seed. Now, I would get some interesting seeds I didn't have throughout this video, and I'll talk about that. To speed things along, I would always go about find the roaming fairies, racking up fairy points, and I would continue to buy glimmer multiplier upgrades. Now, eventually I would buy my first beanstalk seed, which I was really happy about, especially because of how good I thought it would make the garden look. But yes, eventually it was time for me to open up my first enchanted crate. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed by what I got because I just got a chair. But it would not be the first enchanted crate I would open up. However, what I really wanted to get was the enchanted eggs, which would happen very soon. Now, more and more time would go by, I thought my garden was progressing nicely, my beanstalk was now fully grown, and I would make another wish, it would give me a seed pack, and I would get another glowthorn. But quickly I would get another wish, which would result in another enchanted seed pack, which would give me my first briar rose, which I was pretty happy about. Also, I would buy another glimmer multiplier update. I would also get 3 more wishes, resulting in 3 enchanted seed packs, which gave me another briar rose, my first light shoot, and another glowthorn. But yes, more time would go by, I would buy another couple of fairy upgrades. But yes, that was something I was constantly doing, which would be buying fairy upgrades. Now, eventually, after playing the fairy upgrade for some time now, this is where something interesting would happen, because finally I would get a wish, and with the wish I would get 3 enchanted eggs for the first time. Now, because this was the 5th and final task I completed, I would be out of wishes for at least several more hours, until the fountain reset and I was able to make more wishes. But either way, I had these 3 enchanted eggs which I placed, and I would have to wait a few hours for them to hatch. Now, I was hoping to get some of the rarer animals, and I would definitely get a few interesting ones. I also had grown my garden past 1 billion shekels once again, so it was nice to be back over 1 billion. But yes, I would leave the game, come back a bit later, and I would buy my first burning bud seed, which again, I've waited so long for this one. Between the beanstalk and the burning bud, I was very excited for how my garden would look, especially because those are two plants that really show off the garden. And after a few hours had gone by, it was now time to hatch my enchanted eggs. Now, the first one was a little bit disappointing. It gave me a ladybug, which made sense because I had a 50% chance of getting a ladybug. Now, the second one was a little bit more unique. It gave me an imp, which I had a 15% chance of getting, so overall I was pretty happy with that. But the third and final egg gave me the best thing I had so far, which was a glimmering sprite, which I only had a 5% chance of getting. So although it wasn't a cockatrice, it was still awesome to get a glimmering sprite, especially because it would fly around the garden mutating different plants, so I was pretty happy with that. But I also want to be clear, I was not done getting enchanted eggs, and I was still holding out hope for the rarest of all the animals out of the enchanted egg, the cockatrice. But either way, the fountain had reset, so I would be able to get wishes again. And with all 3 of the next wishes I was able to get, I would get 3 enchanted seed packs, which would give me a couple of glowthorns and a light shoot. But after this, I was able to get another wish quickly, which allowed me to get another enchanted egg, so obviously I was holding out hope that I would get the rarest of all the animals out of it, the cockatrice. And as usual, I would use the fairy points to keep upgrading the fairy upgrades. And once again, I updated the glimmer multiplier, and I was about halfway done with the glimmer multiplier upgrades. But not long after this, I would get yet another wish, and this time I would get my first fairy targeter, which I would place near my burning bud. But once again, I kept updating the different fairy upgrades, and I felt like I was making a lot of progress. Not long after this, I would get another wish, giving me my first glimmering radar. But then after this, I would get another wish, giving me another enchanted egg. Of course, I was holding out hope for the best of all the enchanted animals I could get. Also, another interesting plant I got for the first time was I was finally able to get my first elder strawberry seed, so that was obviously great to get, and it really felt like my garden had been making a lot of progress. And then later I got another wish, which would give me my first pet shard glimmering, which I gave to the lab I had. Now a couple more hours would go by and it was now time for me to hatch my 2 enchanted eggs. But unfortunately, they just gave me 2 ladybugs, so that was a little disappointing. Now for this video, I would return to the game one more time the next day. I would upgrade my roaming fairy spawn amount, maxing it out. So that was the first of the fairy upgrades I maxed out. And not long after this, I got another wish, giving me another enchanted egg, which again, I was still holding out hope for that cockatrice, and I would come back a few hours later, hatch it, but unfortunately, it was a pixie, which was nice to get because I didn't have one. I would also get yet another wish, and this time I would get my first aurora vine, which I planted. So that was nice. I was curious to see exactly how that would look. But just when I was giving up hope of ever getting a wisp wing from the enchanted seed packs, I would get one final seed pack for this video, which of course would finally give me the wisp wing. So although I didn't get a cockatrice in this particular video, I am still holding out hope I will get one. What is funny is right after I recorded the gameplay for this video, I had an admin start gifting all sorts of wild stuff. So if you want to see that video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.